The temple stood silent in the crimson dawn of Krithek's prime, its obsidian pillars reaching toward twin suns that had witnessed 10,000 years of worship. Nancy pressed her palm against the ancient doors, feeling the subtle vibration of power that hummed beneath the stone. "Are you sure about this?" Parker whispered beside her, his hand resting on the plasma pistol at his hip. "The locals said no outsider has entered the inner sanctum in 3 millennia. Nancy's dark eyes reflected the golden inscriptions that spiraled across the entrance. "We didn't come 40 light years to turn back now. The artifact is inside, and we need it to decode the predecessor signals." The doors groaned open, revealing a vast chamber illuminated by bioluminescent crystals that pulsed like a cosmic heartbeat. At the far end, upon a raised dais, sat High Priest Velkanos, a towering figure draped in ceremonial robes that seemed woven from starlight itself, his eyes fixed upon the human intruders with an intensity that would have frozen lesser beings. "Desecrators," his voice boomed, translated imperfectly by their neural implants. "You dare violate the sacred house of the First Voices?" Parker stepped forward, his diplomatic training taking over. "Honored High Priest, we come seeking knowledge, not conflict. We believe your people guard a linguistic matrix that could silence." Velkanos rose, his form expanding until he seemed to fill the chamber. "You speak of things beyond your comprehension. The First Voices are not for the tongue of primitives who have barely learned to crawl between stars." Nancy felt something stir in her mind, a fragment of memory that wasn't hers. Since childhood, she'd experienced strange dreams of vast libraries and voices that sang in frequencies human ears shouldn't hear. Her colleagues had dismissed it as an overactive imagination. But standing here, surrounded by the resonance of ancient power, those whispers grew louder. The High Priest began an incantation, his words twisting through dimensional harmonics that made reality shudder. Parker stumbled, clutching his head as the neural implant struggled to process sounds that violated causality itself. But Nancy stood firm, her lips moving unconsciously. Then she spoke. The words that flowed from her mouth were not human. They were older than Earth's sun, syllables that bent space and made the crystals sing in response. The language of the predecessors, the mythical first civilization that had seeded the galaxy with knowledge before vanishing into cosmic legend. High Priest Velkanos froze mid-gesture. His eyes widened in what could only be described as existential terror. The ceremonial staff slipped from his trembling hands, clattering against stone with a sound like breaking worlds. "Impossible," he breathed, collapsing to his knees. "The sacred tongue, spoken by a human? This cannot be." Nancy felt the words continuing to pour forth, not from conscious thought but from some deep well of ancestral memory. She spoke of the great archives, of the covenant of stars, of the seeding protocol that had been established when the universe was young. She spoke truths that the Krthekian priests had only glimpsed through 10,000 years of devotion. Parker stared at his partner in amazement. "Nancy, how are you doing this?" She couldn't answer him because she was lost in the flow of knowledge, cascading through her consciousness. Images flooded her mind, the predecessors selecting certain species across the galaxy, encoding fragments of their vast knowledge into genetic sequences, creating living repositories of their wisdom. Humanity had been one of those chosen vessels, though they'd forgotten their purpose. Until now. The High Priest prostrated himself fully, his voice breaking with emotion. "Forgive this humble servant, speaker of the First Voices. We did not know. We could not have known that the humans carried the divine seed." Nancy's eyes refocused, the flow of alien language finally subsiding. She felt exhausted, as if she'd run a marathon through her own DNA. I don't understand what just happened." Velkanos raised his head, and Nancy saw tears streaming down his face, tears of joy, terror, and religious rapture mixed together. "You spoke the words that only the predecessors themselves knew, the words that created our civilization, that gave us purpose among the stars. We have guarded fragments of their language for eons, never daring to speak it, only to preserve it in Holy Scripture. But I'm just a xenolinguist from Earth," Nancy protested, her voice hoarse. "No," the High Priest said reverently. "You are a carrier. Your species was chosen to bear the complete linguistic matrix, the master key to all predecessor knowledge. We thought the carriers had been lost in the Great Silence, that no species had survived with the full inheritance intact. Parker helped Nancy sit down, his mind racing. If what you're saying is true, then humanity has access to technology and knowledge that could change everything. Vulcanos nodded slowly, his composure gradually returning. Yes, but it also means tremendous responsibility. The first voices encoded their wisdom in human genetics for a reason. They foresaw a time when the galaxy would need their knowledge again, a time of great crisis. What crisis? Nancy asked, though part of her already knew the answer. Whispered by the ancient voices in her blood, the high priest walked to a crystal display that suddenly activated, showing a map of the galaxy with vast dark regions spreading like a disease. The silence is returning. The force that consumed the predecessors is awakening once more. They left their knowledge with humanity because they believed your species would be the ones to face what they could not defeat. Nancy felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. She looked at Parker, saw the same determination in his eyes that had carried them through a dozen impossible situations before. Then, I guess we'd better learn how to use what they gave us, she said. Quietly, the high priest smiled, a gesture that looked strange on his alien features but somehow universal in its meaning. I will teach you everything our order has preserved. Together, humans and Crethexians will unlock the full legacy of the first voices. As the twin suns climbed higher, flooding the temple with light, Nancy felt the ancient language stirring in her mind once more. But this time, she wasn't afraid. She was ready to become what the predecessors had intended, humanity's bridge to the stars, and perhaps the galaxy's last hope. Parker squeezed her shoulder. Ready to save the universe? Nancy laughed, the sound echoing off ancient walls that had waited 10,000 years to hear the first voices speak again. With you, always, the end.